not late. I'm trying to print something and I can't get it to work. You're good. Let's see if that went through.
I am facing the witness, and one of you objects. I have no idea who it is that's objecting.
Do I need to start speaking on the protest?
Once everybody can access.
I need to know it's not. You can't do objection. It sounds like I'm.
If you speak loud enough, I can tell the difference between the two. Staying over here.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Objection.
Yes, like that. Probably it's so bad.
Keep your seats, everyone. Thank you. Anything we need to discuss before we bring the jury back in?
I'll make sure my witness is here, I guess, Judge. I'll be right back.
Okay,
That's okay.
okay. Okay. I think it's better if we- Yeah. Because that one's not right. So okay, let's try that bill. Let's do that then for the regular and maybe the jury one. All right, folks, you notice the deputy has rearranged one of the chairs near the jury box. Juror number one apparently told the deputy on the break that he's having a difficult time hearing. He felt like he heard the testimony sufficiently that it would not affect his ability to consider the case. But we thought maybe if we moved the chair down closer to that overhead speaker, that might help. Is that correct, Bill? That's what the...
Yes, sir.
All right. Do either of the sides want us to bring in juror number one, Mr. Kuntz, and talk to him about that? All right, very well. Anything else we should bring up before we bring the jury back in?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go ahead and bring them in. We have our witness right outside, Ms. Scott.
Yes, sir. Is that me again?
Yes. Right up here, sir. You can have a seat. We'll have you sworn in when the jury comes in. At least for the next couple of weeks.
Hurry up.
Everyone else can be seated. Deputy, if you would please raise your right hand and support my clerk.
You solemnly swear or affirm that evidence you shall give in the issue in the state of Florida and this defendant shall be the truth and whole truth and the truth.
All right, have a seat, please. Scott, whenever you're ready.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you please introduce yourself to the jury by telling them your full name and how you're currently employed?
Richard Newman, I work for the Leon County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, and how are you employed with the Leon County Sheriff's Office?
I am currently a sergeant on the patrol.
Okay. And back of February of 2019, what was your title with Leon County Sheriff's Office?
I was a detective with the violent crime unit.
Okay. How long have you been in law enforcement?
About 16 to 17 years.
And I know you said you're a sergeant on patrol and previously you were a detective. Can you explain to the jury what the difference is between those two roles at Leon County Sheriff's Office?
Well, the sergeant on patrol is a supervisor on patrol.
And patrol does what?
They are the first responder. They give initial responders to the scene
Okay.
or incident.
Okay. Take statements,
Correct.
collect any primary evidence. Okay. And as a detective with Leon County Sheriff's Office, what are your duties? How do you become assigned to a case?
Well, we do not go out to the scene on, if it warrants it, we will respond to the scene. If not, the deputy, if he writes up a report, it gets approved by the supervisor, then transfers to the whatever unit, in this case it was in the violent crime unit, and then it's dispersed to the detective to follow up on.
Okay. What kind of follow-up work do you do routinely on violent crime investigations with LCSO as a detective?
Well, it really depends on the crime, but you investigate anything from a simple battery to a murder, so. But generally, you just review the report, and then you either interview witnesses, and then you try to follow up on that based on what the report dictates.
Okay. And we're here for the case against Mr. Irvin Bell. Do you know what case I'm referring to?
I do.
Okay, and were you assigned to be the detective on that case? And what follow-up, if any, did you do on that case?
I spoke to the victim, and again, this was a couple years ago, so do you mind if I pull up my report if I need to refer to it?
That's fine, just let me know, and then when you're done refreshing your memory, just look up.
I would make contact with the victim, and if I could find any witnesses, interview them in this particular case. I went to Hungry Howie's to look for any kind of video.
Okay. And you actually went to Hungry Howie's to do that?
I did initially.
Okay. Was there surveillance footage there?
They did have surveillance footage.
And were you able to collect it?
I was not.
And why not?
According to one of the store managers, Mr. Lopez, they recently switched systems, and that particular system was only saving video for a couple of days.
Okay.
And the time has lapsed and put it over.
And what date did you first try to obtain a copy of the surveillance footage?
That will have to be put in.
That's fine, take your time, let me know when you're done.
February the 27th, 2019.
And was that the first time you were told that you could no longer access the surveillance footage?
No, I actually spoke to a couple of store managers, and then finally got to Lopez, who was supposedly their IT person. He was the one who informed me there was no longer, the video was no longer available.
Okay. And was that later on down the line?
It was on March 7th of 2009.
Okay. Had you made other attempts to contact and get the video between February 27th and March 7th of 2019?
I talked to several school managers and then finally kept me to Mr. Lopez.
And that's when you were told that it had been overwritten?
Right.
And specifically, did you speak with any of these employees about whether or not they were a witness to the incident?
Who was there? We don't make contact with in the store.
Okay. And did you find or locate anyone who was able to give you a statement about the incident?
Well, once I finally spoke to Mr. Lopez, he advised he was working that night.
Okay. And without going into what he told you, did he tell you about anything that he witnessed?
He did.
No other questions?
Any cross-examination?
Yes, sir.
Permission to recondition?
Yes.
Everybody hear me okay? Afternoon, it's Sergeant, are you?
Is this, sorry.
So you are a sergeant with the Leon County Sheriff's Office. And you've been doing this job for a long time. Sorry, is that a yes for the record?
Yes, it is.
And in fact, you've been doing this job for 16 years, almost 17.
Correct.
Okay. And for cases, generally, you take over after, or at this point in time, in February 2019, you would take over after uniformed patrol deputies would write original reports.
Correct.
Okay. And you take over cases when there needs to be more investigation done.
Correct.
And you understand the importance then of collecting evidence.
Correct.
And that evidence can come in many forms, right?
Yes.
It can come including additional witnesses.
Is that a point? Yes.
Yes, yes. Additional evidence could be surveillance video.
Yes.
Okay, and all of that could be evidence that ultimately could be presented to a jury, right?
Yeah.
Because the jury has to determine whether or not someone actually committed a crime.
Yeah.
Okay. And in February 2019, you were assigned to this case to find additional evidence.
Yeah.
You were looking for evidence that corroborated or matched up with Kelsey Garrett's story.
I was looking for the truth.
Right. So you were looking for evidence that corroborated one side or another.
Correct.
Okay. So you went to the Hungry House. And you were attempting to find independent witnesses?
Well, I remember in there looking for video, whoever else was, other possible witnesses, correct?
Sure, and we'll get to the video too, but first I want to just talk about the independent witnesses. Those are important because they're not one-sided, they're not biased, right?
Yeah.
And so you eventually come into contact with Mr. David Lopez.
Yeah.
And you learn that Mr. Lopez is the manager of that particular Hungry Howie's, right?
Yeah.
And you learned he was present at the Hungry Howie's the night of February 24th of 2019.
Yeah.
And that was the night this alleged incident took place.
Yeah.
And he was working the night shift that night.
Yeah.
So typically at a restaurant, there's not just one person working, right? There's multiple people, cashiers, right? Typically,
I'm not exactly sure how many employees are working at it.
but multiple employees.
Yeah, it was late at night, so
Okay.
couple.
Okay. So you never asked David Lopez for the names of any other employees that were working on February 24th of 2019, did you?
No, I told him to ask if anyone else to give me a call.
Okay. But you yourself didn't ask for any specific names?
No.
Okay. So those other employees would be potential independent witnesses to this incident?
Correct. If they observed it.
Sure. And you spoke to Mr. Lopez, though, about what he saw on February 24th, 2018.
Sure.
And you did not ask him for a description of the black male that he saw in the store that night.
I don't recall, it's 2 years ago. It's not in my notes, or my report.
Would your deposition refresh your recollection?
Big work.
Would the deposition that you gave refresh your recollection?
Sure it is. But your question was, did I ask for a description?
Right, you did not ask him for a description of the black male he saw enter the store that night.
Correct. But he seemed to be familiar with it.
Okay. And you didn't ask him for a name of that black male either?
No.
You didn't ask him if there were any other store employees there on that night?
I asked him, I believe, like I said, it is not, but I said, if anyone else was working that night, give me a call.
Okay.
And they observed it.
Okay. And he never told you that Mr. Bell touched Miss Garrett on the back?
No, he said, I believe the shoulder a couple of times.
Okay. And so he never told you that Mr. Bell touched Miss Garrett on her bottom?
No.
So there are no independent witnesses that corroborate exactly what Miss Kelsey Garrett said, right?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And so earlier we talked about surveillance video being a type of evidence. That can be a pretty significant type of evidence, right? One that you would certainly want to gather. So for instance, if that video shows a person committing a crime, that'd be pretty important evidence for a jury. Or if the video showed that a person was innocent of what they're accused of, that would also be pretty significant evidence for the jury. And as a trained law enforcement deputy, you know that getting surveillance video can be kind of time sensitive. Right?
Yes.
Right. And it can be overwritten or erased pretty quickly.
In most cases, but it's based on my training or my getting out there. Most systems keep it between 30 and 45 days before it's erased.
So generally, it can be overwritten or erased as quickly within a few days or a few weeks, maybe even a month.
What was the question?
It can be overwritten or erased in that period of time,
This particular surveillance system?
generally.
Yeah, it could be not recorded or, the next day it could be.
Right, right. So you know it's important to act quickly and get it. Okay. So I want to talk about the attempts to get surveillance footage in this case. And just so that I'm clear, what date were you actually assigned to this case?
I do not.
Okay. Well, you know that the first thing that you did in this case was on February 27th of 2019, right?
Sure.
Okay. And that's 3 days after the alleged incident?
Sure.
Okay. You tried on February 27th, you were unable to get the footage.
Sure.
And on March 7th of 2019, you tried again.
I tried again? No, I think there were several attempts. Like I said, I spoke to several different managers before I got to Lopez. And then Lopez said he was going to look for it, but on April 7th, until we get the thing on there. But
Okay. So on March 7th is when you learned that there was no more surveillance footage.
sure.
Okay. And that was 12 days after the alleged incident?
Sure.
And that was when you had finally spoken to Mr. Lopez?
No, I spoke to Mr. Lopez previously.
Okay. So one of your jobs as an
07 was the day he actually told me the footage was on there. That was, I spoke to either one manager or Mr. Lopez in between that time, trying to get whoever I need to speak with and get the footage.
Okay. So one of your jobs as an investigator is to speak to any witnesses that were there, right? Okay. And you contacted Ms. Kelsey Garrett over the phone.
Correct.
You never spoke to her in person.
No.
And in your conversation, you learned that she had 3 children with her on February 24th of 2019.
Correct.
And these children were 14, 17, and 20 at the time, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And just for the record, are you referring to your report?
Yes.
Okay. And you reviewed, let's see, Deputy Prager's report in this case.
Correct.
And the witness ages are typically listed in an incident report?
Yes.
Okay. So you didn't speak to any of them about what they witnessed in this case?
At her request. She didn't want to get them involved.
Okay. So you didn't speak to any of them because Ms. Garrett asked you not to?
Yeah, they were her children and she didn't want to get them involved, yes.
Okay. And as an investigator, is it your normal practice not to speak to witnesses if the complainant asks you not to?
Children, yes, correct. Or anyone, they don't want that person and the victim. Typically we will honor that right if we need, but if we have, for some reason, unfortunately, you have to, because yeah.
Okay. So ultimately, you decided to write an arrest warrant in this case?
Right.
And you created that warrant on April 2nd of 2019?
I believe so.
Okay. And that was when your investigation concluded?
Correct.
So just to recap, during this investigation, you were unable to collect any surveillance video?
Correct.
You did not confirm with any photo lineup that Mr. Bell was the correct suspect?
No, based on the original deputy's report.
You didn't find any independent witnesses that corroborated Ms. Garrett's version of events.
Other than Mr. Lopez.
Okay. You didn't speak to any of the other witnesses that Ms. Garrett told you were present.
Your children, no.
And just for the record, those are the children aged 14, 17, and 20.
Correct.
And you never personally came into contact in person with Ms. Garrett.
That is
So all you have was the story of Kelsey Garrett
correct. And Mr.
and
Lopez.
speaking with Mr. Lopez. Just a moment, Judge.
Yes.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, sir. Just a couple of follow-up questions for you. You were asked a little bit about your conversation with Mr. Lopez as a potential witness in the case. Did he indicate to you that he saw the suspect touching Miss Garrett in the store when he was working that day?
He did. He said he saw her, he observed him touching her shoulder a couple of times. But I believe it's never, I guess, the lower back. Yeah, I recall that, you know, not being rude, it was just never observed her touching the lower back, but did the shoulder a couple of times.
Okay, so I'm going to slow down, read your report, and then let's break that down a little bit so we can understand. In your report, you do that, simultaneously so that 2 years later you can recall what somebody told you. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so take your time and just please read that and let's talk about it. Okay, so you said he indicated to you that he saw the defendant touching her shoulder a couple of times. What else did he indicate to you?
Overruled.
What was the question?
What else did he tell you about what he witnessed?
He observed the male touch her shoulder occasionally, but never recalled her touching her back or lower back.
Okay, so the only contact that he saw was him touching on her shoulders.
Correct.
And he saw that a couple of times, he indicated. So you didn't just have the statement of the victim, you also spoke to an independent witness who saw him make contact, or the suspect make contact with the victim.
Correct.
And that's someone you found through your investigation, correct?
Correct.
And when you spoke to Mr. Lopez and he finally indicated to you that he couldn't give you the surveillance, did he tell you specifically how many days that surveillance would have been saved within their system?
Yes, he said 3 or 4 days.
And how many people did you speak with from the store about getting that surveillance over the course of the 10 days that you were trying to get it?
Come back to my phone, I actually called, sent several messages, so I'd say at least 3.
At least 3 people?
At least 3 people before I got directed to Mr. Lopez.
Okay.
Yeah. But there was one they were in store and then gave an offer that was got to Mr. Lopez.
Okay. Were you aware that Mr. Bell had admitted to the patrol officer that he was at Hungry Howie's that night?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe that a question was asked of you on cross about how many days from the date of the incident did you start your investigation? And the question was posed as 3 days, but really this happened late at night, early morning of 24th and 25th of February. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was 2 business days for you to make your first attempt to try to get the surveillance footage. No other questions?
Any of the jurors have any questions for the witness? Raise your hand. No hands. May the witness be excused to go about his business.
I'd like him to be retained, please.
All right, sir, you can step outside. Stand judge with the prosecutor. Any Any other witnesses or other evidence from the state?
No, sir, the state rests.
Very well. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached a point in the proceedings where I need to do some work with the attorneys outside of your presence, so we're going to ask you to leave your notepads face down on your chairs, retire to the jury room. We'll call you back in as soon as we're ready for you. Thank you very much. The jury stepped out. Everybody can be seated. Ms. Burr states the rest of their case.
Judge, sorry, my back is to you. At this time, defense would move for judgment of acquittal. The state has not held a prima facie case of battery. There is no independent witness that expressly corroborates the sheriff's story that he shooted touched on the bottom. The only other evidence is completely contradictory between the other witnesses and the sheriff's personal report. So at this time, we don't believe that the state has proven convictions.
Anything from the state?
I believe there's evidence on the record of 3 different witnesses, the victim, Miss Nike Rice, and also testimony through Detective O'Neill about Mr. Lopez's statement of a touching from the suspect and the victim in the case. And so that for prima facie case of battery.
Very well. Go ahead and deny the motion for judgment of acquittal. Will there be any defense witnesses?
Yes, Judge, defense has a witness who's outside right now, Mr. Lopez.
All right. While we've got the jury out, rather than bouncing them in and out, why don't we take a preliminary run through the jury instructions?
Judge, may I take a brief bathroom break and let Mrs. Kraft handle the jury instructions?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be handling it for the defense, so.
All right, so page 1, introduction to final instructions is standard.
Judge, defense would request the omission of the felony portion of felony battery to provide for future trial.
All right, well, we're not quite there yet, so let's. Statement of the case is has been charged with 1 count of felony battery. The request from the defense is to eliminate the felony word and just use battery. That is denied.
Your Honor, just for the record, the state is not
For the record, what now?
the state has no issue with omitting the word felony.
All right. The ruling stays the same. The charge has 1 element. Anyone wish to be heard on that?
I don't think that we've got any evidence of bodily harm, so I request that we omitted.
Signed with the state, Your Honor.
To eliminate the phrase involving bodily harm.
Yes, Judge.
What about the sentence under that? Intentional touching or striking.
No, Judge.
All right. Anything left on page 1 to discuss? No? Page 2, plead not guilty, reasonable doubt, burden of proof. Is all standard. Anybody wish to be heard on that? Page 3, weighing the evidence. The first 5 almost always apply. As to number 6, we know that will there be any testimony that anyone's received money or preferred treatment in order to get them to testify. We'll take that out, and obviously if that changes, let me know. Pressure or threat been used against the witness?
I don't think that applies.
Ms. Kraft?
I agree, Your Honor. Yes.
So, did the witness at some other time make a statement inconsistent? Leave that. Has the witness been convicted of a felony misdemeanor involving false statement? Will there be any evidence of that?
Don't anticipate any evidence of that.
Any general reputation evidence?
Not from the one.
None, Your Honor.
No. Next paragraph, whether the state's met its burden does not depend upon the number of witnesses. Leave that in. The fact that the witness is employed in law enforcement. Leave that in. Expert witnesses, will we have any experts at this point in the trial?
No.
We had,
She's an adult now, so
Yeah.
Miss Cecilia Garrett, she's over 20 years old.
so taken out child witness, Ms. Kraft.
Yes, Your Honor.
Right. Entirely proper for a lawyer to talk to a witness. Leave that in there. Rely upon your own conclusions about the credibility of a witness, that's standard as well. So, top of page 5, defendant testifying or not testifying, leave that alone until we know for sure what Mr. Bell's decision is. Rules for deliberation then on page 6 are all standard. Leave number 7 in for the moment. So far, nobody's had any questions. We may be able to just take that one out. Anything else on page 6?
No, sir. Thank you.
Cautionary instruction, standard. Verdict. I have to get you all the verdict. Closing argument is standard. Submitting the case to the jury is standard, though. Do we anticipate that there will be any physical items entered into evidence?
Yes, sir. That's a picture of the video.
Pictures?
Yes.
Okay.
So on page 7, it says you may find the defendant guilty of crime or guilty of one lesser included crime. The other thing justified. The defendant will be asking for the lesser included crime to do that or to get rid of it. The lesser included language, so it's not to be confusing.
All right, Ms. Kraft, just guilty or not guilty?
Yes, Judge.
That's fine, Your Honor.
So what does that do to the next paragraph then?
I think from only one version may be returned to the crime charge, that parent can just be eliminated and then the rest of it.
Say that again, Ms. Cooper.
Only one verdict can be returned as to the crime charged where the defendant can be found guilty of more than one lesser included. I think that's what it would just go away.
All right, I'm on the paragraph that begins, if you return a verdict of guilty.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judge, I skipped one. I think it's fine to leave it out too. It's fine to leave it all out too, but original thought was to really love that to the thing which should not be confusing, but it's gonna make it more confusing.
What do you think about just taking out that entire paragraph?
I would like the verdict to be unanimous.
Well, that part's going to stay. I'm talking about the paragraph that says, if you return a verdict of guilty.
Yeah, that's.
Ms. Kraft, you okay with that?
That's fine by me, Judge.
So under verdict, it'll just say, you may find the defendant guilty of charge or not guilty, and then go right into the verdict must be unanimous. That means all of you must agree to the same verdict.
And then getting rid of that second sentence in the third paragraph, going straight to the verdict of the crime.
We'll take out. It'll now read, the verdict must be unanimous, that is, all of you must agree to the same verdict. Only one verdict may be returned as to the crime charged. The verdict must be in writing, and for your convenience, a necessary verdict form has been prepared for you. The closing argument is standard. In the case of the jury is standard. And the exhibits are those, we have hard copies that they'll be able to take with them to the jury room?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they won't need to come in here to see anything. And there's more than one photograph?
Yeah.
All right, so I think I've made the changes that we've discussed. I'll print you all a fresh copy when we get to that point. Are we ready for our next witness?
Yes, sir. Do you want me to have him in here and?
Yeah, let's go ahead and make sure that he's out there. And Ms. Gaston, can you come on up for a second? Jury instructions.
And Mr. Lopez approach the witness.
Yes, come on up, please.
Right up to you.
Yeah, we're gonna have to, I take that off, so. What time do you usually?
I'm on Friday next week, so.
Okay. If you don't like this, I'd like to have it, nailed down. No, not yet. I think I've got it. Yes, you did. Thank you. Are we ready to bring in the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Sir, once they get in here, we'll have you get sworn by the clerk, okay? Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Judge, ready to call this witness? All
Yes, Judge, defense call David Lopez.
right, Mr. Lopez, would you raise your right hand, please, to be sworn by the clerk?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you put in and the issues in the state of Florida and this defendant shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, thank you very much, sir. Would you scoot your chair up and do your best to speak into that microphone so we can all hear you? Whenever you're ready, Ms. Burke.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lopez.
How you doing?
Good. Do you work, or where do you work, sir?
I work at Hungry Howie,
And how long have you been working at Hungry Howie's?
almost 20-something years,
And what's your position there?
manager,
And how long have you been a manager?
pretty long time, about 15
Okay.
years.
What Hungry Howie's have you worked at?
Most locations are the ones that the incident happened at, the one on 38, 39, and I'm relocated to the one on Thomasville Road.
So you worked at the one on 38, 39 North Monroe, and then the one on Thomasville Road as well?
Yes.
Okay. And when did you work at the one on 38, 39 North Monroe Street?
Prior to the COVID, before I got transferred.
Okay. So on February of 2019, where were you working?
I was working at the 38, 39 North Monroe.
As a manager, what are your responsibilities?
To get the clients in and out as fast as possible.
Okay, so to make sure that their food is like not delayed and things like that.
That's correct.
Do you have responsibilities for client satisfaction and things like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Is one of your goals to make sure clients have good experiences?
Yeah, make sure that the product and everything is correct before they leave.
Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the the Hungry Howie's on 3839 North Monroe Street. That Hungry Howie's, is it by other stores?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it in the shopping complex?
It's a little shopping complex with tropical smoothie and then a big little CVS store beside.
Okay, so the tropical smoothie is where in relation to the
Then
Hungry
go right
Howie's?
on the same platform next to us.
Okay, and you might know where I'm going with the question, but for the court reporter, let's make sure we one at a time, okay, so it doesn't get confusing, okay? Does Hungry Howie's have a parking lot?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is that parking lot?
In front of the store.
Is it like a parking lot that's also in front of the tropical smoothie?
That's correct.
Is there any other parking for people?
Yeah, if you go around the building, there's additional parking. That's where the CVS parking lot is, additional park there.
Okay. What does the Hungry Howie's look like inside?
It's kind of big for its location. It has a lobby with a counter with a tall bench, a tall stool, and then you got a couple benches inside the store.
Okay. Is there a place where customers order?
Yes,
And then there's what you're describing as this kind of taller bench with stools there,
that's correct, in front of the counter.
and then separate tables as well.
Yes.
Okay. All right. At any given time, how many employees are usually working at the Hungry Howie's?
During the peak hours, could be up to about 6 to 8 employees, and then when they're done peak time, it can be about 1 to 2 employees toward the end of the night.
Okay. And you spent about 4 years at the Hungry Howie's on 3839 North Monroe?
That's correct.
Okay. Good man approach?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Lopez, I'm going to show to you what I've previously been marked as defense exhibits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'd like you to take a look at them and tell me if you recognize them. Look through them.
That's my location.
Which location?
3839 North Monroe.
And how do you recognize it?
It's the only one that got the countertop like that in all the Hungry House.
Okay. And do those photos fairly and accurately represent what the Hungry Howie's at 3839 North Monroe looked like on February 24th, 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
But at this time, I move defense exhibits 1 through 6 into evidence.
1 through 6.
I'm sorry?
Which numbers?
And numbers 1 through 6.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, you so received.
Okay. And Judge, I'm going to be showing them to the jury as well, but I'm going to make sure that it's all there and take it back with them. So let me just walk you through some of the things in those pictures for 1 second, sir. Defense Exhibit 1, what am I looking at here, Mr. Lopez?
You're looking at the dining area of the front of the counter with the registered people to get their food.
Okay. And this counter, this long tabletop here, is that for customers to sit at?
That's correct.
Okay. Defense Exhibit 2, what am I looking at?
You're looking at the left side of the building where the window's at, and beside that window, there will be the 2 open doors to enter the building.
Okay, so this is kind of where the customers would come into the store.
That's correct.
Okay. Defense Exhibit 3, what am I looking at?
You're looking at the entering room to get to the kitchen.
Okay. Defense Exhibit 4, what am I looking at?
You're looking at the shelf where we store our food for customers to come and pick up.
This is close to where the cash register is.
That's correct.
Defense Exhibit 5, what am I looking at?
You look at the register.
Okay, so this is like a side view kind of the registers.
Yeah.
And finally, Defense Exhibit 6, what am I looking at?
You're looking at another register. That's the one you maybe,
Okay, so there's multiple registers?
there's 2, yeah.
Okay. Obviously, if it's busy, you might be full. But it's busy times as well. Thank you, sir.
Well,
Okay, I want to talk about February 24th, 2019. Do you remember that date?
not today, but I remember the incident that happened.
Okay. Were you working at the Hungry Howie's on North Monroe that day?
Yes.
And what shift were you working?
Night shift.
What time is that from?
Come in at 4 and leave, according to that time, that year, we closed at 12 o'clock.
Okay.
1 o'clock on Fridays and Saturdays.
And at some point, do you see a female come in?
Yes.
Okay. And does she take an order?
Yes, she made an order.
And what does she do after she makes her order?
Said that she was harassed after she got her food.
So after she makes her order, does she wait for a while in the store?
Yeah, they got to wait at least 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. And where is she waiting for her order?
She was waiting at the counter with a tall bench, tall stool.
Okay. Is that what you showed me in Defense Exhibit 1?
Exhibit 1, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Second stool,
She's sitting at the second stool?
that's correct.
Okay. And then while she's sitting there waiting, is she facing towards the window to leave, or is she facing towards the counter?
She's facing the counter.
Okay, where you order?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so her back is to the table.
That's correct.
Okay. And at some point, do you see a black male enter?
Yes.
What does he do?
She starts talking to her.
Okay, where does he stand?
He stands on, if you show the exhibit 1,
Yes, sir.
Yes.
he's standing on that side. He's standing on the left side of this counter, of the table.
Okay, so he's standing on the other side of this little wall here.
That's correct.
Okay, and she's sitting in the second stool.
That's correct.
And did they start talking, or what do they do?
They were talking, but I don't know what they were talking about.
Okay, you can't hear their conversation.
No.
Do you see his hands moving at all?
His hand was moving, but it wasn't actually, grabbing any personal parts.
Okay. Does he seem mad or angry or anything like that?
They were just chatting.
It seemed kind of like a normal conversation to you.
Yes, ma'am.
At any point, do you ever see him grab her?
No, ma'am.
Do you ever see him pull her?
No, ma'am.
Push her?
No, ma'am.
Do you ever see him touch her in any way?
And then grabbing any personal parts? No, ma'am.
Do you see any contact between them?
Not physical contact, like fighting or anything like that? No, ma'am.
So you never see him touch her?
He had his hands up, but it looked like he maybe touched it, on the shoulder, on that side of the shoulder. But that's, I say, yanked her or pulled her or anything like that.
Okay, so like, you would describe it as kind of a casual touch as a part of a conversation?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she ever scream out?
No, ma'am.
Did she ever yell?
No, ma'am.
Did she ever shout?
No, ma'am.
Did she make any kind of exclamation?
No, ma'am.
And from your vantage point, does she seem to be in distress?
No, ma'am.
What's your role during this time while she's there? What are you doing in the store?
I was making food.
Okay. Do you have eyes on the two of them the entire time?
Yes, ma'am. Everything's safe. When we make the food, you got the food right here, we got the registers right here, and that bench that she was sitting on, or the tall stools, is like in line, so you can see what's going on in the lobby.
Okay. Now, at some point, do you come in contact with the female?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she like approach you, or what happens?
I came to the counter and she said she was sexually harassed after the gentleman left.
Her words to you is that she was sexually harassed?
Yes. And then for me to call the law enforcement.
Do you remember giving a deposition in this case?
To the law enforcement.
No. Do you remember coming into my office and giving a deposition
Yeah.
in this case? Okay. So your testimony today is that were her words that she was sexually harassed by this man?
Yes, ma'am.
And you remember giving that deposition?
Yes, ma'am.
Obviously, February 24th, 2019 was a long time ago, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When you gave this deposition in my law office, was that closer in time to the incident than today's date?
Can you repeat that?
When you gave this deposition at my law office, obviously that was several months back, correct? Okay. And do you remember when you gave that deposition being asked, and her words to you are that she was verbally assaulted, and your answer was verbally assaulted, and could I call the law enforcement for her?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember giving that a statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that what she said, or did she say she was sexually assaulted?
She was sexually assaulted by the gentleman.
Okay. Did she say that he touched her?
Yes, that's what she told me.
That he touched her, or that he assaulted her?
He sexually assaulted her and then that he touched her. But I don't believe that he touched her, in that kind of way. Because I had seen nothing going on in the lobby and I told her that she needed to call the law enforcement.
Okay. Mr. Lopez, would your deposition refresh your recollection as to what she told you that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Reporting counsel, page 23, lines 10 through 12. And as well as 14 through 17.
Okay, want me to read it?
I'm just asking you to refresh your recollection. Have you had a chance to read it?
I don't want to read it.
Let me know when you're done.
Exactly what I told her she needed to call the law enforcement, that's correct.
Okay. So, reviewing your deposition, you were told saying that her words to you was that she was verbally assaulted.
That's correct.
So she did not say she was sexually assaulted.
No.
Okay. And when I asked you, did she tell you that he touched her in any way? You said, I can't recall if he said anything like that, correct?
That's correct.
Is that a correct reflection of your conversation with that lady that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And she asked you to call the police, correct?
That's correct.
Did you do that?
I had her call on the law enforcement because I didn't see nothing happening in the lobby.
So you never saw any physical contact between
That's
them?
correct. And then the law enforcement came, but I escorted to her vehicle.
So you escorted the lady to her vehicle?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you said law enforcement eventually came?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it the same night?
I believe so.
Okay. And did you speak to the officers that night?
They gave me they asked me a couple of questions, and I gave the same answers. But people talk, they put things down a different way.
Okay. Did you ever tell the police officer that you spoke to that you saw the male touching a female inappropriately?
No.
Okay. Did they ask you about surveillance cameras?
Yes, ma'am.
And does the Hungry Howie's on North Monroe have surveillance cameras?
Yes, ma'am.
Referring you to Defense Exhibit 1, do you see any surveillance cameras in this picture?
Yes, that one's facing, the back entrance to the restaurant.
Okay, is that the same one as Defense Exhibit 2 here?
Yes, ma'am.
And Defense Exhibit 3, do you see a surveillance camera?
Yes, ma'am, that's for the people who come into the store.
Okay, and in 4, do you see a surveillance camera?
Yes, ma'am, that's, over the registry.
And 5, do you see a surveillance camera?
Yes, ma'am, that's over the registry.
And number 6, you see as well 2 surveillance cameras, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Hungry Howie's, here, they have a number of surveillance cameras, correct?
Right.
Okay. And there is a camera that would face directly at that high top table, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How frequently do those cameras record over?
They record at 7 days after it's, used.
They record 7 days after they're used?
Yeah, 7 days and then it restart.
Okay. Do you remember giving a deposition in this case and advising that they recorded over 3 days after they were used?
But that's the old system. That's the new one that you, pulled.
Okay, so there's been several systems of surveillance cameras.
That's the second, set.
Okay, one re-recorded over after 3 days, and then the other after 7.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, did the officer ask you for assistance with the surveillance footage?
Yes, ma'am, but we had no access to the camera.
Okay. How would you get access to the camera?
It has to go to the owners.
Okay. Is that something you just make a call for?
Yeah.
And you just get a passcode for that or something?
No, they come up and then they pull it.
Okay. Now, Mr. Lopez, have you ever testified before?
No, ma'am, this is my first.
Are you a little nervous?
Why?
Okay, that's fair. I just wanted to be clear. The statement that she said to you on the day of the incident, when she came up to you, was that,
Objection, as stated.
Sustained.
Mr. Lopez, earlier you mentioned one of your roles as a manager is to ensure your customers have a good experience.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if you had seen a crime in your store, would you have called the police?
Yes, ma'am.
No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Lopez. I just have a few questions for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I think we've all touched on this a little bit. It's happened a while back. It was in February of 2019, so quite some time. Do you think that your memory was probably better a week after the incident than it is today?
Yes, ma'am. But remember exactly what happened at that point. But anything prior to that and after that is more fade.
Okay. And you weren't really paying attention while you were working to what exactly was happening, were you?
You can see everything, but I can't hear everything.
Okay. And you were cooking, so you weren't paying attention to these customers. There were multiple customers in the store at the time, right?
No, just on those two.
There were only those two people in the store?
Right, ma'am.
And you were paying very close attention to what they were doing while you were cooking?
It's only what they ordered, and that's about it. You can see what's going on in the lobby. I mean, there's no other things you can see besides those two.
Okay. But were you paying attention to them while you were cooking the food?
Yes, ma'am, you can see it in a few seconds.
Okay. And we talked a little bit about your deposition. That happened on March 23rd of 2021. So it's been a few months from now. I was there, defense was there. Do you remember that deposition?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And if I show you again a copy of that deposition, would it refresh your memory about if you were paying attention to them while you were cooking?
Yes, ma'am.
And for defense, I'm showing the witness, page 16, line 14. So if you could please just leave this here back, here, so I can continue here, and then we're done with that.
Right?
Does that refresh your memory as to whether or not you were paying attention to the man and the female that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you paying attention?
According to that, is that you can see if anything yelling and screaming, I could just look right up.
But you did say under oath at that deposition that you weren't really paying attention to them, I was making the food.
I was making the food, but you can look up, guys, you can't see what's really going on.
And your testimony then was that you were not paying attention to them, correct?
But
So there was no one else in the store, just this one female and the male she was speaking with, is that right?
that's right.
Did she come in alone, did you notice?
Yes, you did.
Did anyone ever come in to join her later?
No, ma'am.
What about when you walked her out to her car? Was there anybody else out there with her?
No, ma'am.
So you walked her by herself to her car?
That's right.
Is there anyone else in her car?
No, ma'am.
Or anybody that came to meet her?
No.
Any children, any teenagers?
No, ma'am.
She was totally alone.
That's right.
And when you saw him speaking to her, you described that he was up kind of on the back to the side of her, is that right?
Top shoulder.
Top shoulder? Was he kind of whispering to her, or?
I can't tell if they were whispering, but I can't tell whether it was thinking the other was loud.
Okay. And at the time, the surveillance footage that would have captured this only held video for 3 days, is that right?
That's correct.
You recall law enforcement calling multiple times trying to get that surveillance from y'all?
I don't know how many times they called, but they come to see if they can get surveillance.
And did you speak personally with law enforcement about that surveillance footage?
We couldn't have no access to it.
And I think you've been asked a little bit about whether you saw the two of them touching. I've heard a couple different things. I want to be clear that you did see him touch her, you said on her shoulders maybe once or twice, is that right?
It could be, I mean, you can't tell from when they're sitting back here, like that, when we're talking, but that's about it. It's facing away from me, she's blocking.
Do you recall talking to law enforcement about what you saw?
Yeah.
And you told them, didn't you, that you saw him touching her shoulders on multiple
I told you it
occasions?
could be like he was touching her.
Could be,
Could be.
but you specifically said shoulders.
So,
And also you weren't really paying attention to him, who knows?
just at the beginning, I mean, not the whole time that I was making the food, I mean, you can look back and forth and check to see who's in, looking at the lobby.
And it's unclear, your memory's a little unclear about whether or not she said she was sexually assaulted or verbally assaulted, is that right?
If you want to compare them, I don't know what you consider verbal assaulted or sexual assault, but I didn't see no sexual assault in any, touching on the wrong spots. I didn't see none of that the time that I was there.
And I'm asking you specifically about what she said because, I'm sure you're,
Sir, you have to let her finish the question and then you can answer. Go right ahead, Ms. Scott.
it's more about what she said to you because I've heard you say that she said verbally assaulted and then I've also heard you say sexually assaulted. And those are important when we're talking about specifics in a courtroom. If your memory is a little unclear about what she exactly said, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we're, only saying what you really remember.
Okay, if she was sexually assaulted, I did not see anything physical contact, like, grabbing her, holding her, or touching any inappropriate spots. Verbally, I can't hear if she says anything to him, or he said something to her. Cannot hear that.
So you don't remember what she told you exactly?
She came up to me and said she was harassed by the gentleman. If it's verbally assaulted, I can consider which one is, verbally assaulted or sexual assaulted. But she said she was assaulted.
And you told her you wouldn't call law enforcement because you hadn't seen anything, right?
That's correct. That she needed to call out, I escorted to the vehicle.
Okay. By herself with no one else.
That's correct.
I don't have any other questions.
Any redirect?
Right. Hi, Robert.
May the witness, let me ask you this. Do any of the jurors have any questions for the witness? Raise your hand. No hands. May the witness be excused to go about his business?
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. You are excused.
Thank you.
You too. Any other witnesses or other evidence for the defense?
I have a vote, please?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we need to do just a little bit more work outside of your presence. So if you would, please leave your notepads face down, and we will come get you just as soon as we're ready for you. Thank you very much for your patience. All right, the jury stepped out. Everybody can be at ease. Ms. Berg, let me know when you're ready.
Yes, I've had this conversation with the guys on those. So Mr. Ralph is not on the testify, you're allowed to question about that?
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Bell, I'm going to stand up just because I can't see you outside of this computer screen, but that doesn't mean anything other than I can't see you. So would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, you can put your hand down. So, Mr. Bell, I know you've been present throughout the jury selection and the trial today, and you've got two very fine attorneys there, Ms. Keeler and Ms. Berg. We were at a stage in the trial where if you wanted to testify and come on a witness stand like you've seen all these other witnesses do, you would be at that point. You follow me? All right. One of the things that you get you get to decide absolutely is whether or not you're going to testify in the case. You understand? Is that a yes?
I'm sorry.
Okay. So your attorneys can give you their best advice on whether you should testify or you shouldn't. You follow me? And if they told you, Mr. Bell, you better get up there and testify. If you don't, something bad's going to happen. You still have the absolute right to say, no, I choose not to testify. You understand? Is that a yes? All right. And your attorneys could also tell you, look, you better not get up there and testify. If you do, something bad's going to happen to you. And you could say, no, I don't want to testify. You understand? So whether or not you testify is completely your decision. You understand? Have you had enough time to talk with your attorneys about this?
Yeah.
All right. And have you made a decision about whether you will testify?
Yes, I have.
And what is your decision?
I'm not going to testify.
All right. Very well. Thank you so much. And will there be other evidence from the state?
No, sir.
No. So no rebuttal, no.
No, sir.
Okay. So Ms. Berg, I'm not sure if I asked you this. Other than Mr. Bell's testimony, would there be any other evidence from the defense?
No, Your Honor, because of that at that point.
All right. Very well. I think the thing to do would be to just go ahead and have you rest now, and we can do the JOA, and you can rest in front of the jury. We're not going to finish today. It's not going to happen. It's almost 4:45.
Yes, sir.
So
So it'll be the Wednesday then?
that's my understanding. That's what we told the jury. So sounds like Wednesday it is. I'll just tell them to make sure that they don't try to find out anything about the case, and they don't talk to anybody about it. So what we'll probably do is let them go, and then we'll have another few minutes to talk about the jury instructions and the verdict form before we retire the evening. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So we'll bring him in, the defense will rest, and I'll ask the state if there's any rebuttal, and then we'll excuse them for the night.
Okay.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. Did you want to make another JOA argument?
I could really do it.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Keeler. You want to do it?
I can do it for how many
Okay. All right. All right, that's fine. Okay, well, let's go ahead and bring him in then. That was never my plan.
Would have finished today. I feel as though I did a big part of getting it close to that goal.
Oh, we're all indebted to you.
I mean, it's pretty close. I've said that before and I've had people hear something like that. That I don't think it is.
I did a huge, what did you say?
I think my kids do. They hear
They kept picking up the brutal that day. Document their after.
Oh, hey, I remember those days.
Like 5:31 and you're charged $10 a minute or something.
Even if they didn't charge you, you got the stare of death.
And then they call the police at some point. Oh.
Yes, yes.
My son had a different world now.
What was that? Oh, no, I didn't even make the connection. See, I have a friend down in South Florida that fosters kids. He's adopted 2 of them. He's a saint. His kids, his oldest just graduated high school. His youngest is probably going to graduate in 2 years. So they're getting, he and his wife are getting ready to be done. They adopted about 1 year ago. Thank you very much, everyone. Please be seated. Any other witnesses or other evidence from the defense? Any rebuttal from the state? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude all the evidence in the case. And given the lateness of the hour, we had potentially planned to finish today, but I did tell you at the start of the case that we would likely be here for 2 days, and that's what's going to happen. So we're going to ask you just leave your notepads face down on your chairs. We are going to recess the trial and reconvene on Wednesday, as I told you this morning. So we'll ask you to report downstairs to the clerk's office on Wednesday morning at 8:30. We hope to get started right at 9 o'clock. It's extremely important, especially important since we have such a recess, a day recess, that you don't try to find anything out about the case. Undoubtedly, friends and family members are going to be curious about what you're doing. I'll give you a little hint as to a final jury instruction that you will get, and that is, once you are finally discharged, you can talk to whoever you want to and tell them whatever you want to about the case. So if you would just tell them, be patient, and if you want to tell them about it after you're finished, then that will be your privilege, okay? So if you would now just leave your notepads face down and go with the bailiff, and we'll see you back Wednesday morning. Thank you so much, folks. All right. Yes, sir. We hope to get started promptly at 9.
Yes, sir.
Our jury has stepped out. We can be at ease. Healer?
Yes. At this time, the sentence was renewed as petition for judgment of acquittal. No reasonable jury could find that Mr. Fell is guilty of battery. There is contradicting evidence from every witness in the case. Nestor's story is exactly alike. There's the evidence of the touching. You have the testimony from Mr. Lopez, who testified that he did not see any touching with her, that she did not state that there was any touching, and she reported it to him. and all of the state witness testimony is contradictory, therefore no reasonable jury could find Mr. Montgomery guilty.
All right, very well. I do think that this is a jury question, so we'll let it go to the jury. I'll make a couple of adjustments on the jury instructions. I'm going to grant the defense request to remove the word felony, and part of the reason for that is in the event we end up with the bifurcated proceeding, I think it lessens confusion. I had less concern about the word felony because there are ways to commit felony battery, so the word did not concern me. I do understand and appreciate the objection, but in the event we end up with a phase 2, so to speak, I think you all are right, and so we're going to make that adjustment on.
I believe it's just on page 1.
Right, I think I've got it. I'm going to give you a copy. As far as defendant testifying, I took that out and put in, just left defendant not testifying. Does the defense wish both of those paragraphs?
Just the first paragraph.
Just the first paragraph. Take that second paragraph out. On the rules for deliberations, we did not have any jury questions, so I'm going to take out what was question 7.